So, hi everyone. Welcome to Office Hours on our next gen, latest version of Nakisa Lease Administration. And I'll be covering topic today, lease events. So, my name is Ruchika Mogha. I'm a CPA and I'm working at Nakisa for last 1 year. And I work in the solution engineering department. So, as I mentioned before, our topic today is lease events. We're going to start this multiple sessions on lease events. I'm going to cover the basics of it and then start with extension. And if we have time, maybe casualty. If you have any questions, please feel free to either put in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask the question. So, introduction to events. What are lease events? I guess we all know, but I'll just go through it anyways. Lease events refer to significant changes or occurrence during the life cycle of a lease that affects its terms, conditions, or financial terms. So I have placed a small icon that we see on our all object levels at the contract level, lease component level, as well as the activation group. So I'll go further now. And the lease events, they have a financial impact and a non-financial impact. Uh, at the contract level that we have on a latest next gen, we have is the lease events occurring on the contract level. We can change the user notification as well as our partner and lessor, and there is no financial impact on the calculation, the schedule, and the reporting of our leases. On the other hand, we have some lease modifications, which are the major modifications we have in our life cycle of a lease, which have an impact. Lease modification is where we are going to have additional terms and conditions added to a lease, a new lease component, or a change in rate. So those are a few examples of a lease modification, and as well as a lease reassessment. We see that we already have entered the terms existing in our lease component. And at the activation group, we will come and reassess already existing terms entered in the solution. So again, the financial impact lease events, we have contract change, reassessments of terms and conditions already entered in lease component, running indexation, asset casualty impairment, as well as decrease in term and asset. So as I mentioned previously, we will cover in future office hours each of these different types of lease events. Today we're going to commence with the extension. So what are the key considerations of lease events? What are you looking for? So why does lease events matter? Because you have to be compliant with accounting standards. We want to ensure that they are properly recorded. They're reflecting all the lease events, which will further be reflected in our financial statements, which, as I mentioned, is critical for the compliance for the accounting standards, IFRS 16 and 842. Nakisa Lease Accounting Solution, it helps you maintain the audit trail of the lease events, and it ensures the transparency and support audits that you will need at year-end when your auditors come, so that we provide. And as I mentioned, lease events must accurately be reflected in your lease admin systems. You're using Nakisa to ensure the reporting and any financial analysis or any budgeting that may be used later on. So who can perform lease events in our solution? Let's see the matrix. So we have a permission and role matrix in our next generation solution, where we have various roles that can be assigned to a user. So who can perform at a contract level? An event is only a lease administrator role. That a person is assigned with this role will be able to initiate an event. So we see here that we have a lease administrator role, and only they can initiate lease event at contract. Whereas for the lease component and activation group level, users assigned accountant role, they can initiate and run the lease event. Any questions on the roles and permission matrix on who can run the events or any other topics that we have covered so far? I think that is a no. How to do a lease event. As I mentioned in our solution now, we have events that can be for different levels. So we see on a contract events, and at that level, we can do a partner change and update the contact information. At least component events, we can add a new term and condition. Do keep in mind, once you add an event or a term and condition in the lease component, it does not have any financial impact yet. For it to have a financial impact, a user will have to come to the activation group, run the event, and then you'll be able to see the financial impact. So all these different types of events will have an impact only at the activation group level. Now, what dates can I enter to execute my event? So let's go through that. See that the modification date. So the effective date of the lease event, the date a lease event is applied. That's where our modification date is, regardless of the payment timing of any terms and conditions. And modification date always is at the start of the day. So when a user clicks on the icon for the event, they are requested to input the modification date right away. So, and keep in mind when you're inputting the date, the effective date of an event cannot be before the effective date of a previous event. So it is pretty much the same as what you have in any other version. It's always the same. The effective date can only be in a month during the lease term of the contract that does not have any postings done. I apologize for this. It's going to be in the next slide. So these are the two requirements for the modification date that needs to be input in this solution. The next is the posting date and the document date. So when we are completing or activating the event, there's a pop-up requesting us for posting date and a document date. So the posting date, whereby the system will search for a foreign exchange spot rate in the system if you have foreign currency activated, and also to post the proper fiscal year and fiscal period and fiscal year. So, and if you're in connected system, it is important to select a period for posting this modification in an open period. And last but not least, the document date. So this is an arbitrary date for documentation purpose only. There is no financial impact. And this may be used in your reconciliation purposes in your connected system as well. So what this was, the ROU end date +1 meant here, actually, it's going to be on the next slide. So now in our next release for 2024 R3, there is a new capability that has been introduced, which is that now the NLA will allow more flexible event execution after the ROU end date. So what does that mean? If all the postings are made, the activation group is in active status, still in the active status. There is no lease end and there is no, the lease has not been closed. NLA will allow the user to select a modification date, the later of the last payment term, the last payment date, or ROU end date +1. So an simple example is if my term ROU end date was December 31st, I have made all the posting as of this date. Now you have an option to run an extension if you have on 1st of the next year. So it's 1st Jan of next year, you will be able to actually do a lease modification and add that term. You don't need to close and reopen a brand new contract. You will be able to just modify it. You do not need to reverse the last postings, the last period, you can simply add an extension by adding the terms at the LC level, and then again running the event at the activation group. The user is unrestricted in the date value, what they can put for the posting date and the document dates. And why was this capability introduced? As you know, it sometimes takes time to negotiate modifications, and it's common that the user wants to extend the lease term of at the RU, at the end of the RU, and it's at the end of the term. So adjusting the modification date logic allows now the accountants to execute such modification with ease. Any question on this new capability that you'll be able to add more terms and extension on this? Any questions?
So, yes, so this lease modification date, this flexibility here, it is in our latest and greatest version of on cloud system.
So yeah, it
That's
is coming.
okay.
It's coming in the next release. So I think your enablement environment, you have access to that.
Yes.
So you should be able to test in that enablement environment.
Okay.
And once the enablement environment, like the period is over, and it's going to be available, and your production and your QA will be upgraded with the same features.
Is that forecasted in to be in the production environment in December?
No, in production, it's going to be coming in January 20th, 2025. But
Oh,
right now, it's available for you to test in your enablement environment.
thank you.
No problem. Any other questions on this? If anybody has, please feel free to either put in the chat or you can ask later as well. So next is what happens when you initiate an event. Initiating an event, it creates a draft copy of the object. You have the option of creating more than one draft at any time. You can, by navigating back to the active object, and create a new one. Once you put one draft, it becomes active, and any other parallel drafts are automatically deleted. So an example to show is we have a revision, an active contract, and we have two drafts. I think I've covered this. Just want to bring attention that whatever name that you have actually given when you are doing your lease modification, that is the name that gets assigned. And that's what names you're going to see here. So if you want to maintain a logic, you can easily put event 1, event 2, and event 3. It's just easier to navigate later. Impact on schedules, postings, and reports. I'm going to cover the next topic. So what is the impact on schedules? When you're doing any lease modification, example is extension, your changes in the payment amounts, the adjustments to rent increase, or if you have a CPI indexation, you will see changes in your lease payment schedule. And also the timing adjustments, so rescheduling of payment dates or addition of new payments milestones. So if you have additional years, or if you are doing a reduction in terms, so you will see the changes on that payment schedule. Next will be ROU asset schedule, which is right of use asset schedule. The updates for the asset value due to modification and impairment and terminations can be seen, as well as for depreciation adjustments. Liability schedule, it depends. So what your modification is, it will update your present value calculation due to a change in the payment, discount rate, or the lease term. And the adjustments are reflected in the future liability balance. Interest calculations they are recalculated for revised payment structure or changes in the discount rate. With our new gen, we had the possibility of lease classification change. So it depends what the modification is. If it triggers a revaluation, the lease may switch between the two traffic classification and may have impact on the schedules as well. posting journal entries. So all the journal entries, when you're creating a draft, you can review them um, for the capitalization entries, for the adjustments for asset and liability, as well as the income statement before it actually gets activated or you merge it with the active draft. Disclosure reports, I guess once we have activated our modification, it's only then it will update the disclosure reports. You will not be able to review them impact of the modifications on the disclosure reports um, event has been merged with the active version. Just a few examples of different types of events may have on the schedules. So, for example, if you have a renewal, you'll see the extension terms added and the liability ROU both will be updated for an extended period. So we will cover the topic of extension today. I'll quickly go through on the slide and then I'll show you on the solution itself. For running an extension, we have two options. Uh, Either we will reassess a term that's already entered at the inception level when the contract was created, or if an extension needs to be added at a later date, we will come at the lease component level. We will add the new term and condition based on the contract extension, and then we'll run a second event at the activation group level where we'll select the option, the reason to run the event, and as terms and condition reassessment. So in this example that I'm going to go through on the PowerPoint is basically we had a 2-year contract, and on July 1st, we decided to run the extension, and now the extension is for an additional year. So we'll see the modification date of July 1st, 2024, and how it will be impacted. If we have time, I'll try to cover this scenario as well, which I mentioned before, is that if your term has ended and your modification date is Jan 1st of the next year, which is after the end of the date of your REU date, and you want to extend it for another year. So let's do step one, is the lease component event. So this is an example where we will come on an active lease component. We will select on the event. We will assign a name. As mentioned before, when you're assigning these names, this is what you will see in different versions of your lease component once they have been merged. So you will provide a name, and then next step will be you will click on the terms and conditions. Our draft is created, and you cannot make any changes to the definition page or the carrier balance page. So that's why we just come to terms and conditions. In the definition page, we do have the REU end date, which you can see that cannot be modified. We will leave it as is. It's only at the activation group level where we will change it, as all the financial impact is based on the events that occur on the activation group level. So once you come on the terms and conditions, you have multiple options. The first would be to add individually, or you can upload an Excel to add multiple terms if you need. Creating an extension, you will select the type of the payment. In case this is extension, as we said, we will select extension in this name field. We will select our amount frequency, our payment frequency, the amount itself. The payment terms here are just a reflection of the actual payment date. It has nothing to do with the term of your lease. So if your lease is on the first, you can actually input the first of the last month of your lease itself. You do not need to put the last date of the term, but system takes it still as the same. If you put even if you put December 31st, it is going to be the payment is going to be running on the 1st of December 2025. And as required by your contract, you may complete these sections for the payment modes, timing, or if you have any escalating rent on it. Yes, Timothy, please go ahead.
So in this case, pay in the general information, we have payment terms, and then the name is extension.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we were to put base rent rather than extension, how would that impact the financial calculations there? Or is this just a classification to make it unique?
As per my understanding, there is no difference in the calculation itself. But I can confirm 100% and get back to you. Will that be okay?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
No problem. So you can complete this terms and conditions based on the new term that you have received, and then the user, the accountant, will consent to approval. So as it states here, there's a triangle here that will appear. It's because its solution is just notifying you that you have actually entered a term for extension, which is outside the scope of your RU end date. So this is FAD. You don't need to worry about it. When we'll come at the activation group, you will see it again. But once we change the RU end date, you will be able to see that the triangle is disappeared. So once the accountant will send, once the accountant will send it to approval, the approval will receive a notification. They will review what needs to be done, and they will approve it. So once it gets approved, it'll merge automatically with the active, and then it'll become an active status. We will see that at the lease component level, it would have become an active status. So now we want to see the financial impact, the schedules, and we want to run the event at the activation group level. So the user will come to the activation group. They will run the icon, they'll click on the event, and you will see that currently the RU end date is 2024 12/31, which we want to extend. So once you click on the event, the pop-up, as mentioned before, gives you a modification date. So you are going to put July 1st. That's what we want to do. And for the reasons, we are selecting terms and conditions for reassessment. So if you already have the terms and conditions entered but not exercised at the activation group, you will just come to the activation and skip to step 1 for lease component. What I'm showing you is step 1 and step 2 if the term was not included in the initial inception version of the. So the user came and clicked on event. You will enter the name, the modification date, which is the effective date of the event. And then you may or may not select the change in IBR or the contract rate. Next, you click on submit. Once we have completed this, usual system will create your draft. And now the user will have to come and change. So in this example, we exercise an extension. So we'll need to update our RU end date here at the activation group level. Once we do that, then the triangle actually disappears. So the rest you cannot change. Anytime you see a solid line, you'll be able to modify. If not, you cannot change it. So unfortunately, the screenshot was taken before the change of the RE end date was made. That is why you see a triangle. But when I'll do the live demo of extension, you will see the fact that this actually disappears. So once you change the RU end date, the user will come to terms and condition. You will select toggle likely to exercise. And if you have index currencies, you may select indexed as well. If not, you can skip it. And now you can see that the triangle has disappeared. You can actually send to generate schedules. So you can see the send to assessment triangle was here, which is the same, notifying the user. I guess this snippet is taken after that, so that my sent to assessment is disappeared and my RU end date is showing me accurately an extension, the new extended RU end date now. So the approver has now to approve the event. And actually, we follow the regular workflow for generating the schedule, sending it to assessment, and confirming classification. And that is when we can merge and activate the extension at the activation group. And if you want to see your previous versions, you simply click here and you may have multiple versions or one that we just incurred. So what is the impact on the schedules is, again, we see here that we have a line, that green line shows up every time you run an event, and as well as the modifications are now on the little blue that we have on the column for events. Any questions so far? If not, I can actually jump on the UI. Just going to switch my screens. I wanted to go along. Okay, so this is an example where I had already added the terms and conditions at the a second term and condition at the LC. So I prepared this already, so we don't need to do this. But if you want, Timothy wanted to actually see another term which has different dates than the existing one. So I can simply try and do that. So we see that this one I had created for 2027. I will try and create another one. I'll click on the event. I'll come on extension at the you want to see a different payment amount or payment date, Timothy?
Payment amount.
Okay, I can actually do both. So we will do an extension with different amount and date. Actually, these are different amounts. If you see, 2027. So the last year of extension that was done, that was 2027 calendar year for 1 month, and that was $1,000. So let me do it anyways. So I'll come here and I will add a term. I'll do my payment term, and I'm doing an extension, which I'm going to run amount frequency one time, and we will keep the different amount, 1,500, and I'm paying it monthly. So my extension I want to run for 2027. January 1st. Sorry, we'll say different dates, right? So let's pick different dates on this. I will pick 15th of the month, and I'll pick it for 6 months.
Actually, just keep the payment date the same. It's just different amount. That's it. We don't normally change the payment date.
Okay.
Yeah.
We do have the option, so even as this if you want. So I've completed what's required for me to complete the term itself. I have added the term and the triangle exists. I will send for approval. It will get approved by the approver. Once they have reviewed the modifications, they can leave some comments here, which will stay on the file. And now we have automatically been jumped to the activation group. So if you go back on the lease component, we will see the different versions that we have. And you see that we had initially an extension, and now I have a second extension, which I've exercised. So now I'll come back to the activation, and I would like to run my terms, that is, exercise my term that I just added. So it was 1500 that I like to exercise. The triangle will remain here until I change the definition page, the date. So step 2, we start with clicking on the event itself. Then we select the name. I'm just going to write, in this case, extension 2 and the modification date. So I don't know what is the last posting date I had. Apologize. I'm just going to jump back on my schedules and see if I had any postings. So let's see. Show me all years. And it's most likely have posted everything. Okay, so the current version I am on doesn't have the new feature, the capability I was talking about in this particular build. So I'm just going to reverse the payments for the last month. And I will go on the payment schedule. And as well as reverse this. So I should be able to do my lease modification on the last day. So I'll come back on the activation group. Again, my lease event. I'm on the last, giving me access. Okay. Years and the schedules to see what postings I should reverse. I have reversed this. Oh, apologies. I think I have to go back. Since I have two standards, I have to go and reverse in both of them. It's only then the system will allow me to run the event on the last month. I'm going to go to payment schedule and reverse here as well. I'm going to check one more time in the operating, the gap. Reversed, and the payment schedule is also reversed. Okay, so now I should be able to click on my event and it should give me the dates. Okay. I'm giving it the name and I'm saying I would like to reassess my terms and conditions. I don't want to change the IBR rate, and I will submit it. We'll come to the terms and conditions and we will exercise this extension after I have changed my RU end date. So my terms is extending it for 6 months. So I'll come here on the definition page. The RU end date needs to be extended by 6 months. So I'll select June 30th, 2027. My triangle would have disappeared here when I click on exercise. So it tells us that this payment term is within the RU end date range. So now we follow the same method and we run our schedules. We send it to assessment after we review it, and we see that the financial impact is what we are satisfied with based on the term that was added. Okay, so we see our schedules already. And if we click on all years, it will show us a green line on actually the last month of 2026, where we see we have additional 6 months. And this is where we see the standard term lease payments changing from 7,000 to 1,500. As well as when we click on the journals, it will give us the review of what accounts will be impacted by what amounts for the asset adjustment and liability as well. And once it's posted, we'll see the posting, the journal, the GL account numbers and more details on it. So once the user is satisfied with the review of the schedule, they can come and approve it, review modifications on a summary here, leave more comments if required. They will confirm the classification and they'll be able to activate the event. So now again, system requests you for document date and your posting date. As mentioned initially, if you're connected, ensure you're using an open period for the posting date, and the document date is for your user. It can be arbitrarily used as mentioned before. So once it's submitted, it's going to merge with my previous extension, and this will become an active version. Any questions on that? Simple extension.
So in the case that we have, if we choose to update the IBR rate, would that impact the financials prospectively or retrospectively?
Prospectively, going
Okay.
forward.
Okay. Thank you.
So the lease modifications, thank you for your question, by the way, Timothy. And the lease modifications can be done on a UI, as you have seen me doing it manually one by one for each contract, or a user, I'm going to wait. Okay, perfect. It's good timing. So we can see that my extension 1 and extension 2 now has been exercised. So the initial one is here, where a bio only had the terms exercised until 2026. If I click on this, it'll sort it for me. I see that it's ending on December 31st, 2026. And if I come on my active, that's where I'll see my terms and conditions ending on 2027, June 30th. And my lease mod was the last month. So this is how you see it, that the event has been completed. I just want to show one more thing. In our new version now, in the release that's coming up now in 2024 R3, we have a system for you, since you can see that can get very populated with different terms. And if the user want to just see what terms are active. So right now, you just see by clicking in this small box, you have three options. Historical means terms that have finished in the past. So anything from, for example, the periods depends. So for previous years, it will be historical. And if you have inactive, means you have not exercised them. So you can simply see the look changes, and it's just for more ease when you're reviewing stuff and you're seeing which terms are active. So if the user says, okay, I just want to see my active terms, you remove the others and you just see the one that's our active terms. So this is also a feature that's coming in the next release, which you can test in your enablement environment right now. Any question on that?
What's the default out of the box for the...
There is no default. I don't think so. There's a default. It might have everything. I think it depends also if you have the historical. You may not have historical in a new contract. Did that answer your question, Bruce?
Yep.
Okay, so unfortunately, in this version, we have to see everything. And then I was mentioning where and how you can do, right? So we saw how you can do it, and what are the two options that we have to do lease events in general, not just extension. So one was the example I showed you that a user come manually on the UI and runs the event. The other option is that I'm just gonna, the user can come on our batch modification. So if you come on the batch management, you have the option of mass modification. As we know already, we need profiles to run our mass modification jobs. So user can come on jobs. As you can see, I had created one earlier today, and I wanted to input it. So I'll show you how I did it, and then we can continue with our least modification, or show you an example simply for the same extension. So when a user wants to do in mass and they know which contracts they would like to do it, they can come on batch mass modification job. They will select the plus icon to start and create a mass modification job. I'm selecting lessee in this case, and I can select only one at a time. So if I want to do lease modification, I can select lease modification or activation. So you'll select, you can assign a name to it. So if you are doing lease extensions, so you can write extension, and you can write the date you input or whatever name a convention you have. I'm going to enter today's date and using my profile. And if I know which contracts I want, I can simply come and select a contract or lease component, right? So it does give you options, or if you already have, you can just simply copy paste it here and it will find your result if it's there in the system, and you will select add. So what will this do is that it will create an Excel file for you to download with the existing terms and conditions. And then you can modify it, add your extension, and you can upload it again. So I am just going to add this just to show you what happens. So it creates on the left panel your request that you made, and the right is the modification task that eventually it's going to run. Right now, its first step is to schedule and generate that template where you will modify your changes. And once it's ready, it's going to show an example like this one. It's going to create these files here for you, and it's going to tell you your pending user input now. So initially, when it's scheduled, it gives you a notice, a status saying scheduled to generate the input template. So I'm going to click on refresh, and I'll wait for it. Where I have this document I'm going to show you. Once it's ready, you can download this. So what it appears is, give me a second. So that the contract we just created that extension for, I had downloaded that one, and you can see what it gives us. So it gives us these three tabs. It tells you what you have downloaded and what are the existing terms right now. Then you can see the lease component terms in details, and I had added this one. So, which is in that example will be 1500, and we want to, let's go from column left to right from A to Z. So we want to create this term, and we are saying it's an extension. So I can write this as an extension. It's one-time payment monthly, and I was selecting 2027 01, and I'm extending it to 2027. It is 0630 for 6 months. One time advance payment. I'm not paying month end. I'm keeping the rest the same. So So the user can save this and then they can upload this on the UI. So you will be able to actually modify multiple lease components and bring them at the same time in the solution. So I'm just going to move this aside since we already made the adjustment one time. I'm not doing it again, but just to show you, it gives you the same results. And also you can click on, on the view job. It actually tells you what you had selected in this particular mass modification. So if you had multiple contracts, it'll list you all the contracts as well. And it gives you an idea what you have commenced. So once you have done your lease, the changes you requested that you want to see for the mass modification, you can upload your contract by clicking the plus icon here and selecting your document and simply clicking import. So that's another way of doing it. Unfortunately, we are short of time, so I am going to skip showing you, but please feel free to test this if you have not used it yet. And you can ask your questions next time for the mass modifications or the extension. Any questions as of now that comes to your mind? Okay. Um, so these are the two ways you can do your lease modification events, not just extension, but lease modification. Another thing I want to show is once the modification is done, I'll go through the best practices as well. But we have the new report, which was not in the previous versions, is the asset data report. So what does it do? The asset data report, let's see where it is first. You will see this report actually under your reporting module, and it's right here. And it is the data report per unit. Second one below. So the report is displaying per unit the opening balances, additions, disposals, depreciation, and ending balance for all the units. So this is like a dashboard, and you have the option to validate the changes that you have made. And so, for example, actually, unfortunately, this is a different build than I was showing you previously because it has some issues with the other build for this particular feature. So if I come and select one contract, I'm seeing everything for this particular contract. So this is a dashboard that you can play around. This is not out of the box that you can modify and play around based on what you need to validate and review. So in the example previously we had seen, we had done the extension, right? So if you want to see those changes for just one particular unit, if you're done on the UI, you can see all these filters available for you. You can select and pick anything you would like to see, as well as you can add and remove filters here to narrow down your search, as well as your columns can be modified here. So right now it has all the columns that are available for you, which may be overwhelming or you don't just need it. And as well as you can actually move them around. So I was looking for the period end and wanted to move it around so I could see it in the first column. So if I um, want to move it, any particular column, I simply can pick and I can move it. So you will see that it actually will move the view of it. So I'll go back in the beginning and we see the contract ID is here, but I like to have my AG in the beginning, the AG ID. So if you see my AG ID is here, and I say I want to search it this way. So the solution is supposed to change it and bring it in. Sorry, give me a second. I think I was too fast. I actually deselected it. Apologies. Let's keep it simple. Let's bring the contract name. Bring it for me. But normally it should move it for you. and as well as you can deselect all, and you can search for a particular column that you're looking, and then you will be also able to see and export this in Excel. So as well as you can, as I mentioned previously, if you're doing a lease modification and you want to search for that particular AG later and see the impact is, you can simply come and select dates. I think I am choosing something that doesn't want me to. So if I say I want to show me all the modifications that are made only for this period. So let's come and modify this for 1 second. I want to change my date range. So I don't want this to be the date range. I say, show me all the lease mods. I did it for the month of November and add to the range and save it. So you'll see from this shows me all the modification that was done for this particular period. You can drill down contract ID, and if you have done any lease modification on it, you can drill it further. So if I scroll right, you will see the changes. Sorry, I'm just going to go a bit fast here. So you will see changes on this during this period. Bear with me. So I think I prefer exporting this file and then playing around with it. Be able to see your modifications. Okay. So even though it saves the periods or dates are different, but I think the modification was done for that date, 2024 reception date. The last example that I wanted to show you. But anyways, this is one of the ways you can validate at a unit level as well. You can drill down all the way after any lease modification or lease event has taken place. Okay. Okay, so I don't think we have enough time to cover casualty, so I'm just going to jump on back to my PowerPoint. And what are the best practices? Just we'll cover that. And the next session, I'll cover the other lease events. So what are the best practices? First one will be to review a lease term and condition, verify the extension terms in the contract, including any changes to the payment amount, durations, and renewal options before they are entered. Confirm if it triggers the risk classification, and update your lease details in Nakisa. So as we just did, we did the extension of the term. We updated our lease payments. We did not do any discount rate changes, but if you do, you make sure you have done it when you're doing the lease event. Before you actually merge the draft, as we have seen, you can review your schedules for lease liability, your ROU asset, and your payment schedules. So you can check your recalculation and align with your terms and make sure it's something that you want to do before you merge it. Audit logs are available, so they keep track of all the modification that was done, and the document the rational approval process. That should something be maintained as a business process, I'm assuming, to support your compliances audits. Next, I know we have the functionality, revert functionality. If you have done a lease modification, you'll be able to revert it. But our recommended approach would be to test the modification if you are not sure about it on your QA or your sandbox environment. You can simulate it there and you can validate. And if you are good with it, then you do in your production. So this is just a repetition of it. Excuse me for that. But yeah, basically run it in your QA if you're unsure of it. And then if you are comfortable with it, then you do in the production. So the revert feature should be used only when required, but not for testing purposes, right? So that's what I'm going at. And that's about it. If anybody has a question, please feel to ask now or in the next session.